Hi everyone, Mrs. Bilo here. I'm just picking up from where I left off in the last video. So I was talking about these red blood cells. So this would be very relevant if you are getting an IV at all, whether or not like water is going to move in or out of your red blood cells. So again, up here, it is telling you what type of environment the cell is in. What is the outside of the cell like? So for this one, the outside of the cell is hypotonic, meaning there is less solute outside of the cell, such as like pure water, versus that means the inside of the cell would be hypertonic because your cells have some solute in here, okay? So if I did like some dots, like there's a bunch of dots in here, and then versus the outside, there's like one. So water is going to always move towards hypertonic. In this case, that would be the inside of the cell, which is not good for your red blood cells because your red blood cells could lyse or burst. Versus most of the time, if you go to a hospital, you would get an isotonic IV because that means the solute is the same inside and outside of your cells. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So water doesn't have a preference to move anywhere. It's going to just continuously move in and out of your cells at an equal rate. This is a normal condition. If you put the cell into a hypertonic environment, so let's say there's 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's say the outside of your cells have a lot of solute, a high concentration, like you drank salt water or something. Water's going to want to move towards hypertonic, which is the outside of the cell, and that means the inside of the cell is, in comparison, hypotonic. So when we use hypo and hypertonic, it's all like relative. Like it's all like what's the inside of the cell versus the outside of the cell like. And if the inside has a higher concentration than the inside of the cell is hypertonic. If the outside of the cell has a higher concentration, again, of solute, the outside of the cell is hypertonic. And in comparison, the inside would be hypo, like this situation. And in this situation, your cell would shrivel or what we say crenate. Now, plant cells aren't affected in the same way because they have a cell wall. So plant cells actually prefer this, and they also have that central vacuole right here. So in this situation, if you give a plant pure water, water is going to move into those cells. And that's fine because a plant cell has a cell wall, so it won't burst. And this is what we call turgid. This is actually what plant cells prefer because then they have a lot of water. This is how you know, like, you have like fresh flowers or you have a plant and it's really like, green and it's like very upright and it's very firm. Like that's turgid or turgid. Flaccid, this is when you could start to, I don't know why this is here. This should be over here. This should be wilts. Okay. So flaccid, this is just kind of more of a normal situation. The plant isn't like super firm, but it's not like wilting or falling over yet. Water's just moving in and out at an equal rate. Plasmolysis, this is when the plant would start to wilt. So this is why you don't give a plant salt water. I mean, unless you want to kill some weeds in your backyard, go ahead and give them salt water. It'll shrivel them up and cause what's called plasmolysis because water is going to want to leave the plant. Now, you're probably wondering, how do cells handle all these, it's not like your environment's always going to be the same, right? Your environment's always changing. So how can we help to maintain homeostasis? So here's an example. So I'm going to write down homeostasis, right? So a change could be the stimuli, could be the environment is changing. The outside of the cell is changing. Maybe it's really salty water. Maybe it's not salty water, whatever, there's a lot of solute, not a lot of solute, whatever that solute might be. So how does the cell respond to those changes in order to maintain homeostasis? Because let's be honest, environments could always be changing for cells. Some cells like this one have what's called contractile vacuoles. So remember vacuoles, like in a plant cell, we talked about it. They have a central vacuole. Animal cells do have vacuoles. They're just smaller. And those things can store stuff like water. And so these vacuoles, they don't just store it, but they are contractile, meaning they can push and pull water inside or outside of them to help regulate water levels despite changes. So that would be a really great example of response to stimuli and homeostasis. The stimuli being the water conditions, the solute outside of the cell changing, and then the response being homeostasis, maintaining water levels by moving water in and out in response to that change.